Well, thank you for joining me, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, well, thank you for having me on this program. My name is Celeste González de Bustamante, and I'm an associate professor in the School of Journalism. I'm also a member of the steering committee of this Coalition for Academic Justice.
Great. What kind of courses do you teach within the School of Journalism?
I teach a range of courses. My background is in television news, so I teach a range of courses from the very beginning courses in uh, audiovisual journalism to the very advanced courses where students are producing their own newscasts, which is pretty exciting. I also have another area of interest, and that is in looking at news media in different parts of the world, and mainly Latin America and Mexico. So I do a lot of research on violence against journalists in Mexico, and through a contemporary lens as well as historical lens as well.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. So how did you get involved with the Coalition of Academic Justice?
Our group formed days after the central administration, the president and senior leadership announced its really draconian furlough plan on April 17th, which is a Friday. And so a few of us who have worked together in the past got together to talk about how we could push back on the university's really extreme plan. And we banded together with other faculty, other students, graduate students mainly, and staff. And from that point, a few days after our sort of this ad hoc committee was formed, we sent a letter to the president and senior leadership with more than 2,500 signatures saying that we were very frustrated and disappointed by the lack of transparency and in the whole process, by the lack of shared governance. And by that we mean lack of faculty, rank and file faculty input into the furlough plan and the whole process and the decision-making process beyond even in the furlough, and how the university was going to respond to challenges presented by COVID-19. And from there, our group has been meeting. We've had general meetings almost every week. And we also have 13 what we call action groups who are focused on various different issues, from layoffs and non-renewals to re-entry to the issue of finances and the budget. Those are some of the main, they're all really important, but those are the ones that I think you might have been hearing from recently.
Yeah, definitely. How many members do you guys have total?
Right now we have about 500 members. Most of the membership is faculty, and by faculty there are all kinds of faculty here at the University of Arizona, from adjunct faculty to contingent faculty, those folks who don't have really strong contracts with the university, people who are don't have tenure, for example, who are less who have less protections, if you will.
Mhm.
And that's about 40 about 40% of our membership, and then 20% of our membership, I'm sorry, about 60% of our membership is faculty, these various different types. And then about 25% is made up of staff, and then graduate students and various different types of employees at the university.
Okay. Is the Graduate Student Coalition affiliated with you guys, or is that separate but similar cause?
It's separate. They have their own sort of committee that's running that organization, but we certainly are working together and try to amplify each other's efforts.
Okay, that's cool. So I want to get into the furlough and pay cut plan. I was wondering if you could just kind of explain in general, uh, the origins of this issue and what the coalition wants to change?
Sure. Well, for folks who don't know, we've been saying this a lot, but for folks who are just coming to this issue for the first time, the University of Arizona actually has one of the most severe, what we call draconian furlough plans in the country, where the people who are included in the furlough plan are all of the employees, not just faculty, all of the employees at the university who make over $44,500. And we were able to, as a coalition, we were able to get the university to establish a floor. So with its initial plan that it rolled out in mid-April, pretty much every single employee was having to take some sort of furlough or pay cut, what really amounts to a pay cut. So that was a huge victory for the coalition to establish at least this floor of $44,500. So anybody making below that now is exempted from this plan. But now we still are not satisfied with this plan because it's not equitable, right? Mm-hmm. So the people at the top are taking somewhat of a cut, but they're taking much less than we think they should in terms of their sharing the burden, right? And then another major point that's come up recently with respect to how the university is going to deal with these economic challenges is a financial analyst by the name of Howard Buncis from Eastern Michigan University, who has looked into the University of Arizona's finances and has been able to identify some hundreds of millions of dollars in unrestricted funds. These are funds that are not tied up with the UA Foundation or in other areas of the university that can't be touched. And these reserves could help to offset some of the challenges that the university is facing right now, along with perhaps even furloughs, right? But what we're saying is, let's have a more comprehensive plan. Let's have a plan that's more equitable. Let's have a plan that really has the people who are making the most money. And what do we mean by that? We're talking about people who are making more than $200,000 a year, and in some cases $500,000 a year or more, having them really shoulder the burden more than the 4,000 employees who are making between $70,000 and $150,000. So we're asking for a more equitable plan. We're asking for participation in how that plan is developed, having staff and faculty, real rank and file folks who do the lion's share of work at the university and who really contribute to its core mission, be part of what eventually gets put into place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned some of these high earners and how the coalition wants them to shoulder more of the burden. I was wondering, how much are these people getting cut off from their, salary compared to some of the main body of faculty?
Right. So most of the employees are in the make between 70,000. We're talking about faculty here, 70,000 to 150,000. And these are people who are making 150,000 are the ones who have been devoted their entire careers to the university. They're the full professors, that kind of thing. And so those people who are making more than 200,000 are taking about 20%. Whereas people between 80,000 and 150,000 are having to take a 15% pay cut.
Oh, wow.
So, and on top of that, I think, Cristiano, another important point to make here is that it's not just about the percentages, it's that the senior and top leaders who really aren't teaching and aren't really dedicated to the core mission of the university they have been giving themselves 20 to 30% raises over the past several years, whereas the bulk of the other employees at the university have not seen any kinds of raises. And so what happens, the result of that means that people who are making this, more than $200,000 a year and even higher are, when they take this pay cut, it's pushing their pay back maybe 18 months, 2 years perhaps, right? Whereas somebody in making 70, 80,000 and then being asked in the $80,000 range, for example, being asked to take a 15% pay cut means that your pay then is reduced to a level that it was where it was at like 10, 12 years ago.
Right.
So, and then when you think about what that means in terms of how you recuperate those costs and recuperate those losses, it takes somebody who is making 80 or less much longer to recuperate. It would take those folks years, whereas somebody who's making 200K plus, it would take them maybe a matter of months. I'm talking about in 1 year of pay cuts and 1 year of losses, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so right now we're just talking about pay cuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then also some faculty or other like employees of the university are also getting furloughed, right?
Well, the university likes to use the term furlough, but in essence, it's a pay cut.
Right.
Your pay is
Okay.
being reduced, and what they're saying is they're calling it this flex time. If you could look at the website, they're using the term flex time, and what they are saying is then, because let's say you're getting 15% of your salary is furloughed or cut, then that translates to about 30 days that you won't be working, that you will take as flex time. But in truth, Christian, faculty and staff work so hard that it's really, they still need to complete the mission, the core mission of the university, which is to teach students and do research and provide outreach and service to various different constituencies outside of the University of Arizona. And to say that you're really not going to be working for 30 days is really unrealistic. So that's why we say it is really indeed a pay cut.
Yeah, definitely. And so I understand that the coalition's the furlough plan that you guys have put forward would definitely seek to help alleviate some of the burden off of the general faculty and allow the higher earners to shoulder more of the burden. So I was wondering if you could describe for me like some of the key differences between the current plan of the administration and then what the coalition plan would do better.
Sure. I mean, I don't really want to get into too many of the particulars of the coalition's alternative plan. It is on the website and people are free to go and take a look at it. And the reason I don't want to get into the too many of the details is because that plan actually was a starting point, really to really engage in a true conversation with its senior leadership and say, look, there are different ways that this plan, your plan, the administration's plan, could be made more equitable. For example, people at the higher end, for example, over 200, who are earning over 200K, can take more than a 20% cut. That's one of the key pieces of the alternative furlough plan. But I don't want to go into too many of the details because that furlough plan is not a complete document for the basic reason that the university administration has not shared a complete set of data with faculty or with anybody really who wants to take a look at that data, because this is a public institution. It is being, we take public monies. We are supported by students who pay tuition. and anybody should be able to look at that information. Unfortunately, we've not been able to look at all of the raw data and been able to see updated data as we see that students are enrolling, to see what the projections really are, and to see how much the university is really going to be impacted by this financial situation, right? And the situation that is related to COVID-19. But I mean, in essence, it's much more equitable than the administration's plan because it has people at the top shouldering more of the burden.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so you mentioned the data and how the administration hasn't really been very transparent in its sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so would you happen to know like who's in charge of sharing this data, or who's in charge of like looking at it and determining this plan?
Yeah, well, it's the University of Arizona's finance department.
Mm-hmm.
The person at the top there is Lisa Rolney, the chief financial officer. But it's really the president, President Robert Robbins, and Provost Lisa Folks, who are making those decisions.
Okay, gotcha. And
they could share the information with us, and they have chosen not to. They've given us some tables and PowerPoint slides, but really to be able to figure out how to move forward, we need more information, and they have not been forthcoming to this point.
They haven't like shared any reasons why our plan is like so severe right now. It's just kind of just been like hush hush, I guess.
I mean, the what we hear is what a lot of what folks who watch President Robbins' weekly briefings will hear, and what's been sent to us in emails, general emails. But I think that's a really good question, Christian. We've never heard from the senior leadership what the rationale is behind, what are the principles behind creating such a severe and harmful furlough plan. I think that's a great question that we would love to hear the answer to. What President Robbins has said publicly is that the University of Arizona is different. We live in a state that where the state doesn't contribute to higher education, but we have known that for a long time. This situation with COVID-19 is just kind of exacerbating that for sure. But I think that's a great question to ask. What is the rationale? What are the principles? Maybe you can do an interview with President Robbins following up on this.
I would love to talk to President Robbins. That would be so cool. I'd definitely have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But I understand that, I think it was this past Thursday or Friday, there's a very important vote that went on, which you can totally explain. But I was wondering, like, in general, like, what are the implications of this vote?
So you're right. There was a very important vote that faculty were able to participate in on Thursday, and we had 24 hours to vote online. And the vote was really it was a simple question. Do you vote yes or no on delaying this furlough plan until September, when we have a better understanding of what the enrollment picture is? How many students are we going to have? We won't know that until around mid-September. And that vote was historic, really, because we've never had a General Assembly like that. We've never had so many faculty participating online in a General Assembly with 1,500 people in that General Assembly. Was faculty, staff, students, anybody who wanted. It was open to the public, right? And the result of that vote was almost 90%, 89% of the people who voted, which was more than 1,400 people, faculty, eligible faculty, voted in favor of delaying the plan. So that sends a very, very strong, probably the strongest message possible to the senior leadership that this plan is, we're against it, that we want something better. And we are hopeful that something better could be put in place. If we didn't think that something better could be put in place, then we would not be gathering together. We would not push this this issue with the administration.
Right. And do faculty have like any other mode of recourse besides sending a message? Like if the university, you know, decides to ignore the faculty further, do faculty have like any sort of power to help push back against this, or is it kind of just left up to administration?
Well, I mean, in the end, this vote is advisory to the president, right, and senior leadership. It is not binding. They don't have to delay the plan if that's what they want to do. They can ignore it, as you said. We hope that by the end of today, June 30th, that's the time in which we've asked the president to respond. We hope that they will acknowledge the vote, which they haven't up until the last time I checked my email, which was about 10 minutes ago before we started this interview. We have not heard from the president or senior leadership on what they plan to do, if anything. And it's advisory. Now, what are we going to do if they do choose to move forward with the plan? Was your question, and that is a very good question. We have now some 500 people, members, staff, graduate students, and faculty who make up the CAJUA, and we will be having a meeting on Friday to discuss all of these developments. There's been a lot going on, so we'll be consulting with the full membership to find out what should be our next steps. I mean, I really would hope that the university administration would not completely ignore a vote so strong, such as this. I mean, in terms of turnout, we had 41% of the entire voting eligible faculty, which is 3,300 or so faculty. 41% voter turnout among faculty is huge. If you know anything about faculty elections, I mean, usually when we have a faculty election, we're lucky if we get 20%. That's considered good. So this is 41% of the faculty, 1,400 people, in the midst of a pandemic in summer break.
Right. And so I know you got like 90% against the current for the delay of the current furlough plan too, which is pretty strong.
It's huge. Yeah. That means that, you know, only 1 out of every 10 people thought that this was not the way to vote, right?
Yeah. And speaking of the meeting on Friday, how does faculty join or become involved with the coalition, and where can they find you on social media?
They can find us on social media on Facebook. We're on Facebook. If you just look up the Coalition for Academic Justice. We're on Twitter, same thing. Look us up it's at CAJUA Arizona, CAJU Arizona, on Twitter, and then on Instagram, same thing. Look us up on the Coalition for Academic Justice. If they wanted to join, all they need to do is send us an email at our email, which is CAJUA, CAJUA at protonmail.com. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. We're nearing towards the end of our time. So those are all my questions. If you have anything you'd like to say, feel free to go ahead.
Well, Christiane, I wanted to thank you for being interested in what we're doing with this coalition and how we're trying to really, I mean, it's some faculty, I mean, most of our group is faculty, but we have a huge percentage of our membership is staff, as I mentioned, 25%, and then graduate students. And I appreciate this opportunity to explain what we're about, and that we really do care deeply about what's happening at the university right now, what our university is going to look like in the, what happens with the employees in terms of their salaries, but we're also very interested in protecting employees who are going to be working in classrooms, cleaning classrooms before the re-entry, and if we are able to go back face-to-face, which sort of seems a little bit up in the air right now, we're really interested in making sure that those people who are working and cleaning in classrooms and are dealing directly with perhaps it could be even like a hazmat situation, that those folks are protected as much as possible, because they really don't have a choice whether they work at home or work at the university. They have to clean at the university, right? So we want to make sure that they're protected. And I think that's what I just want to mention, that we are certainly concerned about this issue about furloughs and pay cuts and layoffs that are actually already happening. The university administration likes to say that we need to have this draconian furlough plan because we need to avoid layoffs. But in truth, what's happening is people are already getting laid off. I just heard today that to date, since the COVID-19 pandemic started, some 242 people have either been laid off or not, their contracts have not been renewed. And many of these people are working in key areas that really serve the core mission of the university, which I get back to is teaching and research and service. So we're concerned about a lot of things, Christian. We're just trying to do our best to help those at all people at the university, and because we know that that's important, and it's important to Tucson and the entire state, really, because the University of Arizona is the largest employer in Tucson, and has among the 3 universities, I don't know if you know this, but among the 3 universities, the last economic report on the universities, the University of Arizona contributes more to the state economy than any of the 3 major universities.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So, of course, a long-winded answer. You ask a faculty member a question, they go on and on. But
well, I hope that we can get some justice, and I hope that, the university responds. I'll be checking that out, I guess, tonight or tomorrow morning to see if administration responds. That'll definitely be interesting. And yeah, it was great talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to hop on this call with me.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.